This week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, The Eyes of Laura Mars, stars 70s fashion and glamour. Oh, and Faye Dunaway as a high-powered photographer. It's definitely an erotic thriller, but watching this movie showed me I have so much to learn about being a photographer. Most importantly, I need to really up my fashion game. Specifically, showing lots of legs seems to be extremely important. But then again, she does see the murder of her friends as they happen. So maybe it's just best to stick to blue jeans and boots. Only to save my friends, of course. Cheers!
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hello, boys and girls. I'm Greg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen.
And welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different but highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm delightful. How are you, Greg?
I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
That's what we do. I only have a couple more days till I have to quit. Isn't it like 2 days, National Quitting Day? I won't be delightful anymore.
If you're listening to this on Go Live Day, it would have been last Friday, Karen.
Oh, well.
So you haven't quit yet.
I'm an overachiever.
There you go.
Again.
Shocking.
I don't like your tone. I mean, you're the one who benefits from my delightfulness, so I don't know what you're complaining about.
That is true.
I know.
Just count my blessings. As my
shut
mom
your
used
cake
to tell
hole
me.
and move on, Greg.
No, my mom didn't say that. She said, count your blessings.
Oh.
Karen.
Yes, Greg.
Was this film your choice?
Yes, Greg, this was my choice.
And what film have you chosen for us as your second film in the brand new year of 2025?
I chose the 1978 film, The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Any reason you chose that film, Karen?
Well, this film stars Faye Dunaway, and if you are listening live, well, when this goes live, her birthday was yesterday.
It was January 14th, 1941, apparently. Do we have a cocktail to celebrate Miss Dunaway's birthday as well, Karen?
We do. Go
on. What would that be?
It's called the Faye Dunaway.
I see what you did there, Karen. Very clever.
I'm pulling a Greg. From silverscreensuppers.com.
And how would we make the Faye Dunaway?
You're going to need 1.5 ounces of vodka, 1.25 ounces of mango juice, 3/4 ounces of lime juice, 1/2 ounce of agave syrup, 3 jalapeno wheels, 2 in the shaker, 1 for garnish, seeds removed if desired, and 2 dashes of orange bitters. Simply muddle the ingredients. We do love a muddle. Listed here in the cocktail shaker, shake vigorously and strain into a classic coupe. Garnish with the remaining jalapeno slice and prepare for your close-up.
Thank you, Karen. My coupe glass is black, so you can't see it.
It's very fancy. I don't have one, so I put it in a martini glass. And I could not find jalapeno peppers at my grocery store.
I may or may not either. So what did you use in place of it, Karen?
I didn't use anything.
Oh, you didn't have any heat?
Well, I didn't want to put hot sauce in it. I wasn't sure.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to tell the truth here, Karen. We're going to come clean.
Well,
I did not have any jalapenos either, Karen, because I was not. When we're recording this, boys and girls, we're on the verge of a snowpocalypse. And I was not going to go to the store for 1 jalapeno pepper.
Well, they wouldn't have had it anyway. I don't think they're in season, so you can't get
Probably
them.
Not. I added hot sauce to mine.
Oh,
Just to give me the heat.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the pepper, the pepper, because it tastes different. I thought, well, maybe we have some green peppers. I could throw some of that in to get the texture and whatnot. But nope, I just use hot sauce.
Oh, You're a braver man than I am.
I tried to guess how much juice is in 2 jalapeno wheels. I guess it doesn't say how thick the wheels have to be, does it?
No, and if you remove the seeds, it's probably not very hot at all. The seeds are what bring the heat. So I don't know. I think it would be better with that, to be honest, but we'll comment on it later as we always
Okay.
do. But
Okay,
I
we
get
will.
it, and I see where they were going, and maybe she's spicy. I don't know. I don't know a lot about Faye Dunaway, so
Maybe she is, Karen.
yes,
She was spicy in Bonnie and Clyde, but we digress.
shocking.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own Faye Dunaway cocktail if they have jalapeno peppers in season where they are, somewhere in the world?
We'll have to try again in the summer, but yes, let's do that.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Karen, might you have a brief synopsis for us?
I do.
Go on. Tell us all the story from 1978. You remember 1978, Karen?
Vaguely. I was a
Yes.
baby,
I as well, Karen, because you're older than me.
way older.
All right. Go on.
Laura Mars is a renowned New York City fashion photographer who features sensual and violent images in her controversial work. Suddenly, Laura gains the ability to see visions from a serial killer's perspective, and it happens to be her friends and associates that he is stalking. Aided by police investigator John Neville, Laura tries to prevent the murderer from finding more victims, but she has no idea who the psychopath could be.
Thank you, Karen. We are a match. It's a pretty good one as far as synopsi go. All right, Karen, tell us everything that you really enjoyed and were pleasantly surprised by in this 1978 horror mystery whodunit.
Well, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how many famous faces are in this one. There's a lot of well-known actors in here, probably before they were famous actors. I liked the way it was filmed. It's very 1978, of course, because it was filmed in that time frame. But the way New York is portrayed, it's very gritty, very
Well,
New
it's
York.
1978, Karen.
Yeah, but it's gritty. Like it felt like New York. Like people would think New York is in 1978. And I know it's that, but I liked that look of it.
Did you notice any distinguishing landmarks that said it was New York?
No.
I didn't either.
Besides like the taxi cabs and things.
Yeah, but it could have been filmed anywhere. Really.
True. But it was filmed in New York.
Okay.
I did find that out. But it just had this grittiness to it. And there were times where they would go through an apartment building and it would be crummy at the bottom and just kind of run down. And then boom, you go in the apartment and it's gorgeous. You know, some of the acting was really good. I thought it's pretty much what I got. What about you? What do you got?
All right. First thing I wrote is good acting. I just added sets as well because they are good sets.
They're very good sets.
And I thought the story was good. I liked the story. And apparently the first draft of this was written by John Carpenter, Karen.
Yeah, it's an intriguing story.
Yeah. I like the story. I liked going back to 1978 from what I, remember of it, Karen, because I was just a baby. But
yeah, the fashion's there, the hair is there.
The hair. Oh my God, Renee. Did you see his hair, Renee? I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to try.
No, but
Renee.
he's a famous actor. I've seen him many
Star
times.
Trek Deep Space Nine guy.
But
man, he had a head of hair. So did Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, this is Tommy Lee Jones young.
Yeah.
Where he's a good looking guy. All
right.
Tough kind of.
He always has that kind of psycho look about him, though.
True, which plays well. He makes a good cop.
He does. He does. I agree.
But the fashion's fun to look at. The hairstyles, the makeup, all of it is very The music is
Apparently
70s.
no one wore a bra in 1978.
No, I don't think they did in the 70s. That was very common. The music's there. There's Casey and the Sunshine Band, Barbara Streisand singing something. It's, it's very of the time. Not that it had to make itself of the time because it was filmed then, but it's a nice nostalgic look.
It is. It is a nice nostalgic look. I agree. And if you're of a certain age, if you're a Gen Xer, you'll get it, right?
Like, oh yeah, remember that? Remember that?
This is the only other film I've seen Faye Dunaway in besides Bonnie and Clyde.
See, I haven't seen her in anything.
And I think she was a lot younger. I'm going to look it up right now.
I don't think she was that young. She looks not young in this movie. And I can have you guess how old she was in this movie because I looked it up.
That's my point. I remember her from Bonnie and Clyde, and she is quite a bit older in this. 1967 was Bonnie and Clyde. So it's 11 years before this. So she was 11 years younger.
No.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
in Bonnie and Clyde, she was younger.
Yes, but according to this, she was 27 years old when she starred in The Eyes of Laura Mars. 11 years before that means she'd be 16.
1967, it says.
Was she 16?
She was born in 41, Karen. So what's...
Oh, well, maybe my information's wrong.
She was 26 in Bonnie and Clyde. So she's 37 in this.
Okay, this must be
and that's about right.
Yeah, that's what she looks. That's why I was surprised because here you can see what it says. Look on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a.
Did you copy that from the internet, Karen?
Yes, and if it's on the internet, it must be true.
It is. Yeah, must be. So they meant 37.
Yeah, so she looks 37. Not that it matters.
No, it doesn't.
But I thought she would. When I looked it up, I was surprised that it said she was 27. But I am again wrong. So there you go. Don't listen to me, people.
Except when it comes to, medical stuff. And
even then, take it all with a grain of salt.
That's all I have to say about it. I mean, it was a good film. I liked it. I wish I wouldn't have known the whole story before I watched it, because I would have liked to try to figure it out for my own. But I knew going in who the killer was, because that's the way I am, Karen. I don't like surprises, apparently.
Do you read the ending of a book before you get to it?
Sometimes. Sometimes I do.
You can't handle it. Can't handle not knowing.
It put me in the mind of, I don't know if you've ever seen Dressed to Kill. We haven't talked about that one.
Okay.
That might be a bad analogy. It's just another murder whodunit thing. And much like Body Doubles, too. That's the two films I wrote down. Maybe because they're from the period or something, or I don't know. They're horror mysteries, right? There are horrific elements in it, but it's really
it's a thriller.
Yes.
More. I mean, it's what we say often. I was expecting you to say this isn't a horror film.
It's horror enough. I mean, we're very Halloween at times too, because we are the eyes of the killer.
True.
And John Carpenter wrote it, so that's all I got.
I will say, for the most part, I think the photography is pretty well represented.
Mm-hmm.
The photographs are done. We can get into it later by a famous photographer. So the photography that they're showing in the book and stuff is real stuff. There's a little bit here and there that
looked pretty good, I thought. Not that I'm an expert on photography, but I'm like, those are pretty good, nice pictures.
But they didn't just throw it together.
Right.
There are, so that's well done too, for the most part.
Anything you didn't like, Karen? Did you approve of her choice of camera?
Yeah, she had some nice cameras. I felt like she kind of overdid it once in a while. I'm not sure how she could have been better, but she just felt over the top for me once in a while. I thought it was a little slow, trying to, and they're leading us down different paths of who they think they want us to believe it is. Her husband, is that Raul Julia? Is that who that is? I think he was totally underutilized. Like they kind of threw him in there, but nothing really happens with him. And I think he was good in that part, believable as lovable, but just not really a great guy, but you could see how she would still be well, I don't know. I couldn't see, but
He's gruff but lovable.
I don't know how
He's
to explain
tortured
it,
but
but they
lovable.
didn't utilize him enough. I don't think he could have been in it more, and I think it would have benefited from that. I'm a little not confused. Well, not annoyed, but confused, I think is the right word. Is why did all of a sudden this just start happening to her? Like she should have like hit her head or I don't know, something to make her
Well,
have this ability all of a sudden. Just
so
comes out of nowhere.
I'll stop you right there and say that we did learn that some of the police photos were 2 years old.
Yes,
So
but
apparently she'd been seeing these things for a
well,
couple of
she was
years.
getting yes in her, but flashes. But why? Like what made the connection?
Hmm.
You know, it just seems like something should have happened to give us a reason for this, for their connection to be so intense. It's not like, they had sex or something and became emotionally connected, or like I said, she hit her head, she drank a, some sort of spiked cocktail. I don't know, something that gives me a reason
The
why she
government
would just,
sprayed something into the atmosphere.
I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting story, but there's a big, for me, a plot hole because I'm like, well, what's the deal? Why? But other than that, it's good. Like it's a little slow. It's a little, I don't want to say boring at times, but there is some, it's just move along. I have my attention span has shortened as I've gotten older. But other than that, I don't have anything really bad to say about it.
I wasn't bored by it, even knowing who the killer was. I wasn't bored by it. She did. Oh, I think she might have overacted a little bit, but because she had to do a lot of eye acting, I think, Karen.
Yes.
Because it's
Yes, that's
called
true.
Eyes of Laura Mars.
Yes,
So
I
there's
agree.
that.
That's what I mean. I don't know how else she could have shown us it was happening, but I mean, it would be very strange to see all your friends getting picked off in your visions.
Yes, yes. And actually, the only thing I wrote down is the guy who played Tommy. I recognized him from something else much later, and he was a good guy in it. And so I've typically seen him in good guy roles. So it was hard for me to, even if I didn't know going in who the killer was, it was hard for me to think that it might be him. But that's not the film's fault. It's
So you weren't curious at all where her abilities came from?
no, Karen, because usually, like I always say, I just go with it. I go with it. Just take me and lead me where you will. I typically don't need a lot of backstory, but there was one or two films we've done where I shocked you that I wanted to know more about what was happening, where these people came from and whatnot. That's all I have. There wasn't a lot about it I didn't like. So it was kind of hard to follow the locations. I'm like, okay. Apparently
Yeah.
she has a studio and a apartment flat, right?
Yeah, it took me a while to like, where are they? What are they doing? Oh, wait, no, there's an off. And a lot of the buildings were very run down, like I said, until you open the door and it's, oh, there's this beautiful studio. There's this
Yeah.
beautiful apartment.
You're in this crummy hallway and it looks like a stainless steel door. And you open it and it's like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And more than one apartment was like that, except for poor Tommy's apartment. His apartment matched the
Yeah.
building he was
I
in.
mean, Donald's wasn't great either, really. It was more Rosemary's Baby esque. That's what I would thought when we went to Donald's apartment. Oh, this is Rosemary's Baby's building. Not because wasn't a nice apartment. It looked the period, right?
Yeah.
Whereas hers was more modern. All right. Anything else?
No, that's,
All right. What kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film, Karen?
well, I'd give it a 3 because I want to know where the ability came from. I would say, too, before we move on, there are some pretty good shots in here. There's some
Yeah.
innovative camera work. There's one where Tommy Lee Jones at the end with when he punches the mirror and you see that was really cool. There's a couple of times I noted that that's really cool. They're doing something different
Yeah, we
with the
saw
way they
her
shot it.
the first time we see her bedroom covered in mirrors. I'm like, Are we going to have more about those mirrors later?
It's very leggy, like they show her legs a lot in it.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you, Karen, if you wear skirts like that when you do your photo shoots.
Definitely. That's how I pose when I shoot too. One leg out to the side.
Yeah, so those special photographer
That's
skirts.
why so many people in their photos look like they've seen something horrific.
Well, they would give you lots of room to like stretch out and whatnot, right? Because you're not constrained.
Culottes with slits on the sides, ladies. That's what he's talking about. And the boots. Gotta have the boots.
Yeah, the boots. Gotta have the boots.
Do miss those boots.
She looked good doing it. Give her that. All right, 3 cocktails. That means it took us 3 cocktails to get through this film, Karen. I only had to drink 1 cocktail personally. But...
Oh, it's good. It's not phenomenal, but it's good.
No, it's good. I started checking the time when there was about a half hour left.
Yeah, that's how it's a shame when you watch these movies because, they're in Tommy's apartment. They've got Tommy and there's 20 minutes left and you're like, okay, it's not Tommy. Because if you're in the theater, you don't have that option. I mean, you could check your watch, I guess, if you knew how much time was left. But It's like, I did okay, they're in the apartment. Oh, nope, not Tommy.
All right, 3 cocktails. Before we go through it scene by scene, Karen, would you like to hear a review from the time?
Absolutely.
First, I have to tell you, this has a 61% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Okay.
What do you think Google users think, Karen?
75%.
80%, Karen.
I'm a little off.
Too low.
That's a big jump.
It is.
Because that's pretty consistent with Rotten Tomatoes, and they're about 60. That's a big jump up to 80. But Google's been known to do that, so.
The review I have is from Roger Ebert, Karen.
We do love a good Roger Ebert review.
And it says dated January 1st, 1978, but I don't think that can be true. Because I think it came out in October of 78. August of 78. So, I don't know. Maybe they date things weird on Roger Ebert. And I'm just going to read this whole thing. It's like a 1-pager. I haven't proofread it or anything, so I don't know what Roger thinks. The eyes of Laura Mars sees murderers. Worse still, they see them through the eyes of the murderer, so that glamorous Laura Mars is likely at any moment to suddenly see the faces of terrified victims about to be stabbed with ice pick. Moviegoers found out before the movie opened in the TV commercials and preview trailers. So what would their minimum expectations be for the film? Maybe they'd A, want to find out who the murderer is, B, discover if Laura Mars herself was going to be one of the victims, and C, learn the secret of who and why Laura Mars has these bizarre visions. Anything else and we'd feel disappointed, right? I felt disappointed. I was disappointed because A, I was able to figure out who the murderer was almost at once, and C, the movie never explains Laura's telepathic visions. I was not disappointed, however, in the matter of B, but then I didn't expect to be. There's this whole new genre of movie that Hollywood calls women in trouble. You see them mostly on TV. A woman is chased by a hostile semi-trailer truck, or haunted by the ghost of her late lover, or kidnapped by terrorists. Laura Mars is nothing if she is not a woman in trouble. Remember, boys and girls, this is from 1978. It was a thing. A new thing. Faye Dunaway as Laura Mars is not a great screamer, but she's a very good one. She's also well cast as a controversial fashion photographer who likes to shoot beautiful women against a backdrop of flaming auto crashes. The women, dressed in spiked heels, black mesh stockings, and red underwear, attack each other with their fingernails and pull each other's hair. They also wear expensive fur coats. Photos like this, it said, sell coats like crazy. I shouldn't be surprised some people will do anything for a sable. Anyway, Laura Mars eventually finds that she can no longer function. She has so many visions that she never knows what dread specter will haunt her next. Worse, the visions all come true. Worse than that, the murder victims are all her best friends. If it weren't for her loyal assistant and the understanding policeman, she couldn't carry on. And when the assistant gets killed, there is, of course, no end to the suspects. There's Laura's insanely jealous drunken husband, for example, and the shifty-eyed ex-con who's her chauffeur. But never mind. The movie sets up its suspects so obviously, and they're so obviously the wrong suspects, that the plot becomes a waiting game. Great, except that we're the ones who are waiting. Eyes of Laura Mars tries to say serious things about fashion photography, corruption in advertising, and the violence in our society. It does not succeed, but it tries. We would not, however, hold its serious things against it if the movie also succeeded as a thriller. It doesn't unless your idea of being thrilled is having people leap out of the shadows and then turn out to be friends. I'm not sure Roger liked it as well as we did, Karen.
I don't think he did.
But we were reminiscing about 1978.
True. Who wouldn't love that? There's a lot. I don't like, why was he always putting the ice pick in their eyeball? Like, and at this point, the
it does seem a theme, doesn't it?
That's not explained. And then there's a little bit of, this isn't a word, tropiness of the single mom who's a hooker who doesn't take care of the kid, and then that kid is a boy, and that boy comes out and hates women and kills them. We've seen that more than once.
But that's his story. That may not be exactly how it happened, but he's using that trope.
Right. No, I'm just saying I don't know. I don't think it was a trope in 1978, but it's one of those things where it's the mom's fault because she was out, being a hooker and not taking care of the boy, and she had too many men. There's always, boys don't like their moms to be hookers. It seems to psychologically affect them in the movies for sure.
Truer words were never spoken.
It's not fun, but it's a trope.
I'll be sure that gets in the show notes.
Not every boy who grew up with a mom as a lady of the evening turns into a psychopath, I'm sure.
Probably not.
Especially if they're just trying to feed them.
It's true. Work their way through college, feed their kids. You gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. All right, Karen, are you ready to get into it scene by scene?
Yes, let's do it.
Eyes of Laura Mars from 1978, rated R for violence, nudity, smoking, foul language, and sexual content.
Everybody's smoking in this one.
Yeah. All the good stuff. Everybody is, actually, yeah. Even Laura, we don't see her smoke, but she's got a Marlboro in her hand at one point. Film opens and we hear a ballad playing, theme music, and I'm like, I thought, is that Barbra Streisand? I can only take a little bit of it, and I hit the plus 10-second button, Karen, to see if this was going anywhere. Because it sits on her eyes for a long time, and it's like negative of an eyes, right? Like a negative of eyes.
Yeah, it goes from a very grainy photograph to a negative. Yeah.
Next thing I have is there's ominous music, and they're panning around a room, and we see a gloved hand leafing through a book of photography. Whoever it is cuts a page out of the book using scissors and closes the book, and we see the book is called Eyes of Mars. Next thing I have is we have someone watching a woman make a kettle of water, making some tea, maybe, Karen. And then we see a knife, and it smashes the book.
It's an ice pick, isn't it?
Probably is. Then we see a woman wake up in a mirrored bedroom.
So the ice pick goes into the eyes that are on the book cover.
Yes.
And then she wakes up in her little house on the prairie nightgown. Didn't you find that was a bit of a weird nightgown she was in?
No, not really.
It was white, so they could have done the behind this, light her from behind, but they didn't really do that.
No, they did not. But she tries to call someone on her touch tone phone, Karen. There's no answer. And then we hear sirens as she walks around her apartment. And then
it's a very modern apartment. There's no tchotchkes. It's very streamlined.
Very clean and modern for 1978 anyway. Then we see the book again, Eyes of Mars book, and she's paging through it, and then we see the page that was cut out earlier. She turns to the same page, and she's got scissors on the table with her, and she's like fiddling with them. And at one point, she kind of holds it like a weapon.
So
I
that's
thought
our
this was a really
first.
good scene right
Yeah,
here,
it's just like
actually.
your first thought is, oh my God, is she going to be the killer? Like, are we supposed to take that as a hint? Because of the way she's like playing with the scissors.
Then she makes another phone call, and I wrote, "Is she calling the woman in the photo?" Question mark. Credits. And then I made a note that it was produced and directed by, yeah, Irvin Kershner. You recognize that name, Karen? Irvin Kershner?
I recognize Kirshner that had something to do with rock records.
Well, that would be Don Kershner,
Oh,
Karen.
sorry. Is that his kid?
I don't, I'm not sure. I'm not sure they're related, but Irvin Kershner directed the best film of the Star Wars films, all of them. He
Oh,
directed Empire Strikes Back.
there you go.
So I was excited. This has got to be good because he directed Empire. Next I have is where it's a gallery and there's like an art showing, and apparently it's all of Laura's photographs. She arrives and she's hounded by reporters, some who don't think very highly of her photography. Feminist, I would say. A feminist reporter.
Well, they think that it's demeaning to women what she's doing because she's showing them being murdered and things, not in the, it's violent, but sexy. I have a gallery in Soho. So, and when she gets out of the car, as I said, it's very leggy. They show her legs as she's getting out of the car. And then we see it again on a TV screen later. They're doing it over and over. They're featuring Faye must have liked somebody liked Faye's legs. She does, the director does, I don't know, someone does.
Yeah.
But yes, it's her big gallery opening.
She enters and everyone claps.
So
And
outside they're kind of negative towards her and the way she's presenting her art. But inside everybody, yay.
except for that same reporter who's
Well,
again.
she snuck in.
Okay. And then I wrote lots of photos featuring nude women or topless women, I should have said. And Laura asks someone if Doris Spencer has arrived yet. She's a publisher or something of the book. I don't know. Next thing I have written down is Casey and the Sunshine Band, Karen. Must have been playing
Yes.
the Casey and the Sunshine Band song.
Yep.
And then a man asks her if she knows the artist.
Well, right before that, I do want to say that so she's talking to somebody and she says afterwards she's going to shoot the border war. So not only is she fashion photography, but when this is over, she's off to shoot the border war, which generally people don't do. You kind of specialize in one thing, but she's trying to get some legitimacy here. Like, yes, she has these artistic visions, but she's also a tough border war photographer.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
But then she starts talking to a man who obviously, or we're assume, doesn't know who she is.
Yes. And then someone says at the party that Doris has been murdered and that there's a detective there at the party asking questions. And then Donald tells Laura about the murder and that she was stabbed in the eye.
Yeah.
Next thing I have is Elaine calls Laura.
Well, there's quite a conversation between his name is John, right? The detective and Laura. And he's saying,
yeah, it is, but I called him the lieutenant. So,
but he says he thinks the artist is a frustrated voyeur type and he wants to meet her. And he's very critical of her work. And she asks if he's a critic, but then someone comes up and addresses her by her name. So then he knows that he's talking to her. I don't know if he knew the whole time, but he's pretending or he doesn't
he
know who she
did.
is. So he's pretending. And then I called him the big haired guy, which is Donald. I think it's her. Is that her agent or her publicist or something?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
I thought for a while he was her lawyer, but I think he's her agent. And he spills the beans about someone being murdered. And we also see, is it Peter Dunk? What's the little person's name from Game of Thrones? Dunklage?
Don't know. He's not credited, so I don't know.
But he's in there a little bit.
He is a couple times.
For, she calls him Richard. So he has a name in it, but he shows up a couple times in this.
Mm-hmm. Is it Richard or Robert?
I don't know. He's part of the gang, the artsy gang, obviously, that goes to these things because he shows up at a funeral later, but he's part of the group.
Next thing I have, Elaine calls Laura. She's at home. And Laura asks her if she believes in psychic experience.
So Elaine is the gallery owner, and the woman who was murdered, Doris, was the editor, I think, of the book, or the publisher.
Right.
So the circle's going, okay, the publisher, and now we've met Elaine, and Elaine's not happy because, it's the big opening she wants to sell photos. That's the point of the gallery opening. So she's upset.
And apparently Elaine is with who we learn is Laura's ex-husband.
Yes. We don't know it at the time.
Well, I did.
Oh, well, he says how great Laura looks, that she's still beautiful, and it upsets Elaine.
But they're kissy face.
Yeah.
Next, I have written down Boogie Nights by Heatwave. So we must have another song.
I do say Boogie Nights is playing. I have it too.
And then we see Laura in a makeup trailer, ?
Yeah, she's going around talking to the hairdresser and the makeup person. This is what I want. This is how I want the hair to look. So doing the photographer thing.
I believe we see a couple pair of bare breasts in this scene, don't we?
I think you do. Yeah.
Okay. So then we see a photo shoot of a car accident, ? I wrote. Laura taking photos. Women in lingerie and models pulling each other's hair and fighting in front of two crashed vehicles.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. I think they used a Polaroid
land camera?
You used to use a simple Polaroid camera before you would take pictures.
To block the photos out?
Well, just to see how the lighting was and everything, because it wasn't digital back in the day, people, and you couldn't see.
You didn't want to waste film?
Yeah, you only had a certain number of pictures. There's 36 pictures on a roll of a 35 millimeter.
But in my experience, Polaroids are usually more washed out than a regular
They
photo.
are, but you can see, oh, look, that tree looks like it's coming out of her head, or that person's hand should move, or this person should move forward. So they would do it. In fact, I can talk about it now, that Helmut Newton is the one who provided the images that represented her portfolio. And he was known for using Polaroids to check out his scenes before he shot them. So he was a German-Australian photographer. The New York Times described him as a prolific, widely imitated fashion photographer whose provocative, erotically charged black and white photos were the mainstay of Vogue and other publications. He was very famous. He was born in 1920, passed away in 2004. Very, very respected fashion photographer. She uses a Nikon camera most often when she's shooting 35 millimeter. She does pull out the Hasselblad, which is a medium format, for a little bit. The only thing I'll tell you about that scene as a photographer is her camera shutter was taking way too many pictures.
It was rapid.
One, for how she would have a roll of 36, and the lights were flashing like every 10 times. That you can take rapid pictures like that. You didn't have to click, turn. Mm-hmm. They had something you could buy for the bottom, which would advance it automatically. But she would have been through a roll of film in about 2 minutes. The way she was clicking.
A little quicker than once a second, just a little faster than once per second.
It's a cool sound, but the lights weren't flashing near as quickly. They can't recharge and do that. So, but they still had lights set up. They had the camera. They had, she wasn't connected to the lights, but that's neither here nor there. So it's pretty good, but not great.
Okay. So while she's shooting photos, she has a vision. Next thing I have is German Shepherd.
That's in her vision.
Oh, her vision?
Yes.
And Elaine. And then Laura stops shooting. And we see her in a cab, and she's blocked by trucks. There's trucks in front of her, beside her, behind her, and they all stop. They have to stop because the one in front of her stops.
Yeah, and then she's blocked.
She says, I'm good. Just let me out. So she pays, and
she has an appointment, she says.
And then she gets halfway across a street and has another vision. And it's Elaine being attacked and stabbed and rolled down the stairs.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. So she's at her photo shoot and she's seeing a vision. And we don't know how much later this is. Obviously, it's not very much later, but she says she just got dizzy, but she finishes the photo shoot. Then she gets in a cab, goes somewhere.
It's not
jumps
long
out.
after.
No, but it seems like, I don't know. It didn't, whatever. But
She runs. We see her running down the streets, and she arrives at the building at the same time the police cars do.
Yes.
And it's Elaine's building. She looks in the door, sees Elaine. Cops stop her. She says she saw it, making the policeman think she is a witness. Then the police question her. She tells them she was a few blocks away when it happened. And she realizes that I'm not an eyewitness. They're not going to believe me. So she tries to get away, but they run up and catch her. Cut to a police station. People from the photo shoot sitting and waiting, Karen.
Yeah, why are they there?
Questioning, I guess.
But
I don't know.
why?
They all knew Elaine. Probably.
That's
what I figured.
But you would think they would have called them, I don't know, one at a time without having them all there.
And I wrote, Donald smokes a Marlboro in the police station. Then we see Laura, I guess, being questioned by the guy we saw earlier at her opening. Apparently, he's the lieutenant. He doesn't seem to believe her story. Cut to Tommy being questioned. Apparently, he had a switchblade on him, Karen. He's a thug.
Yeah.
And he's smoking a Marlboro as well. So there you go. Cut to Laura explaining her art to the lieutenant. And he has her book with the eye cut from the murder at Doris's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Laura says she saw everything like in a nightmare. Cut to the police questioning Donald. Donald smoking a Marlboro again. Then the lieutenant shows Laura photos of unsolved murders going back a couple years, and they match photos in her book.
I thought that was pretty cool. Tommy Lee Jones is in his turtleneck too, his brown turtleneck, very 70s.
Laura explains that 2 years ago or whatever, she began seeing images of murders and violence, so she recreated them. Lieutenant takes her to Elaine's apartment. Lieutenant wants to know if she recognizes any of the clothes in the closet he has opened. She thinks they are her husband's.
Okay, so hold on. Back at the police station, because these are kind of famous people, one of the detectives asks Donald for the Rona Barrett, which,
yes,
if you're Gen X, you know.
Renee does his impressions of several people.
Rona Barrett was a gossip columnist, and she would talk about Hollywood. So she was born in 1936 in New York City. It says, as a teenager, she overcame a degenerative hip condition that made walking extremely difficult. But she started by organizing fan clubs for popular singers she admired, such as Eddie Fisher and Steve Lawrence. She became a gossip columnist for the Bell McClure Syndicate in 1957, and then went on to work for Bob Marcucci, I can't say it, the manager for Teen Idol's Frankie Avalon and Fabian, who is
Fabian.
But she began broadcasting Hollywood gossip on the Los Angeles television station KABC TV. She then could be seen on TV regularly, appearing on ABC's 5 owned and operated stations throughout the country. She would go on morning shows and talk shows. She somehow knew all the gossip in Hollywood.
All the dirt.
Yeah, she would go on and then talk about people. She made enemies of Frank Sinatra by criticizing his personal life, particularly his relationships with his children. She angered actor Ryan O'Neal after she wrote some unflattering things about him, and he supposedly sent her a box containing a live tarantula. So Hollywood didn't love her, but boy, the people did. So she wrote some books and appeared on, late night shows and things like that.
So Laura tells the lieutenant last she knew her husband was living in San Francisco.
Did you notice how low the ceilings were in that apartment? Their heads almost touched the ceilings.
Didn't notice.
It was very distracting.
Well, when they were in the closet, they were kind of like in a loft. thing.
Yeah, but even when they came in, both times I said, God, the ceilings are low in that apartment.
So then Lieutenant asks his name and he shows Laura a picture and asks if it is him. Parents a picture in the apartment. And Lieutenant questions her about her ex-husband. She says, well, I'm leaving. I'm out of here unless you're going to arrest me.
It's an inappropriate question.
So she leaves and Lieutenant lets her go, but he runs after her and gives her his card. She asks him if she should hire a bodyguard, and he tells her no, she already has one. So we know the cops are watching her.
Oh, I thought he meant himself, but
No, I didn't think. I thought he just.
because I'm like, he's a terrible
We got
one.
your building covered.
Yeah. So, and the whole time she's running through the city and she's in those culottes, her legs are out, like it's.
What are
And when
culottes?
Well, because they're, I think that's what they're called, but they're slit on the side. And when
The
she's
more slit right up her legs,
when she's shooting, her legs, she's really low to the ground and her legs are out. And she looks good in this movie.
She does.
They
for the
make her
most
look
part.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we see Laura at her apartment, and Michael is there and scares her. Ominous music again. I wrote, Michael tells her he did not kill Elaine, but I wrote, Michael's kind of creepy. And he still
Yeah.
loves her, apparently.
Well, and it's going to look like he did. So all he could do was leave and show up at her house.
They argue, and she says, is $50 enough? And pours her stuff a drink, and he takes the money and leaves, I guess.
Yeah. So
Pays him to go away. $50, Karen.
well, but $50 in 1978.
I knew you would do this.
Well, I wouldn't have left
Yeah,
for $50.
I wouldn't have either, Karen.
So how much do you think it really was? I mean, in our today's money, would you have left for?
What would I have left for? Or what do I
Well,
think it was worth?
What was it worth?
Well, I wasn't leaving unless it was worth like 10 times that.
Well, you'd have been disappointed.
I know, right?
She hands him $50 in 1978, which is equal in purchasing power to about $241.94 today.
Okay.
So he left for about $250.
Not bad, I guess.
But he stays gone for quite a while. I guess, but that's not going to get you very far.
So then we have a newspaper in the police station, and a story reads, Eyes Killer Strikes Again. Let's get a quick shot of it. And then I have Donald and arguing with Tommy in Laura's car, ?
Yeah, before she arrives.
So they all get in the car and they drive away. And then we see, as they're driving around town, Laura's photos on a bus. And then Tommy wants to come clean, and he tells Laura that he's an ex-convict. He was arrested for armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah, I think Donald was going to blackmail him.
Yeah, but
like,
because Donald knew. Donald hired him and he knew. And Laura's kind of taken aback that Donald knew all this and she didn't.
Well, the police are going to start looking into suspects. He's going to be a suspect because of his background. So.
And then Laura tells them both to leave her alone.
Well, they're riding in a station wagon.
Yeah, I know, right?
Which was weird.
It was.
And then they end up in, I don't know, somewhere. Is it the docks? Where are they?
They drop Donald off apparently, and then he gets out and spits out his Marlboro. He doesn't even take it out of his mouth with his fingers. He just spits it out. I don't know. Whatever.
He's going to go clean up something or do something, and then he tells Tommy to go get the flowers, and Tommy drops Laura off, I guess at her studio is what it turns out to be.
Next thing I have is Tommy and driving Laura, smoking a Marlboro. He drops her off. She smokes a Marlboro as well. She gets out. Then he takes the Marlboro from her and puts it out, saying she doesn't need it. And I wrote, okay, so are they at her flat ? She has another vision. She runs out yelling Donald's name. Donald catches up to her on the stairs, and Laura says the killer was in her flat. So was she seeing a vision of her flat and the killer in the building? That's what it seemed like.
I thought the killer was coming up behind her where she was, and she ran out.
That's what I meant.
But they're in her studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, I wrote, cops are watching Laura's place. Lauren and Donald argue. Donald thinks she doesn't trust him. Next, we're getting ready for a photo shoot. Oh, and here I wrote 4 bare breasts.
Yes, the models have arrived.
So this must be where we saw the 4 bare breasts. Tommy arrives with the flowers. Donald tells him to put them in the sink and rinse them off or whatever. Then we see the models getting ready. 2 more bare breasts, Karen. And Tommy gives one of the models a flower. And she's like, oh, a stolen flower. How special.
Yeah, I thought Tommy had a crush on Laura,
Lulu. Well,
but it turns out he likes one of the models, Lulu. Yeah.
Next, we have the photo shoot. Lots of scantily clad women.
Disco music.
The man enters in a tux and he stands there, but then Laura stops shooting and she poses him as a dead body next to the pool.
Yep.
And they have a model point a gun at him. And then Laura has a vision and she stops photographing. She walks away. Lieutenant follows her and Michael watches from across the dark, is what I wrote. Michael's there too. Oh, from across the dock. Because he's on the other side, because her studio is like on a dock, right? In a harbor or something.
Yeah.
And he's watching, and he can see through the windows what's going on.
Oh, I didn't even notice
Michael
that.
does, yeah. So then Lieutenant questions Laura some more. Lieutenant thinks she is overworked.
Yeah, he takes her aside and he says that her entourage thinks she's overworked and she's offended by that. Am I hallucinating all of this? Is everything a dream?
But then she explains what she is saying and she uses a movie camera to describe.
Yeah, she takes him back into her studio and shows him, I think I can show you what I see. So she shows him the video camera and she says, I can't see what I'm looking at. I can only see what's being shown to me like on this movie camera.
And then Laura begins questioning the lieutenant. She wants to know what the killer's motive could be.
Yeah, why is he killing my friends? Why is he after me? And he gives a bunch of reasons.
Some pseudo psychology.
Someone jealous of your success, someone who feels your work is promoting pornography and violence and is on a mission to clean up the world, a person who is outraged about he says, I think, being in your book. I don't know, but he gives a bunch of reasons.
Laura says whoever it is was there this afternoon looking for her. And Lieutenant says he is going to double the security around her. Next, we cut to the police station and the lieutenant is questioning the models, asking about letters or phone calls they have received from fans.
From the book or from the photos that Laura takes, yeah. And they all seem to be into him. They're all having a grand old time. Yeah.
I'm like, really? All right, whatever. I guess Tommy Lee Jones was it 1978. Then we see cops on the stakeout at Laura's house or her studio. I don't think this is her house because she's developing photos, right?
Yes.
Was the technique and the science and everything good for you for developing photos in a dark room?
No. So a dark room for print development involves preparing chemicals, loading a negative into the enlarger, projecting the image onto photographic paper, exposing the paper to the correct amount of light, developing the paper in a series of chemical baths. So it was all okay until she got to there. So
that's what I was wondering.
There's 3 baths you have to do. You do a developer and you let it develop for a certain amount of time. Then you have to put it in a stop bath. So it stops the development. And then you have to put it in a fixer. So if you don't do all those three things, it won't work very well. Mm-hmm. She only has 2 baths. So I don't know.
It looks like she had multiple photos in a bath at one time.
You can do that with the end bath, the fixer. You can put multiples in. But in general, you usually develop one, put it in the stop bath, put it in the fixer because it can stay in the fixer for a while. And then you hang it up to dry. That's how complicated it used to be. It was crazy. And I always you'd go in and it's dark. Obviously, it's a dark room. So you'd go in and you expose the paper for a certain amount of time, go through the whole thing, take it outside to look at it and be like, too dark. Go back in. You would change the amount of time that you project it onto the paper, do it again, come back out, too light. So you had to find that it's not just the exposure you took the picture at, it's also the development of the negative and then the exposure of the print. Quite complicated to get good pictures.
We didn't even see her doing the negatives, right? Just doing the
that's where you have
prints.
to shake it. And you have to load it into a little.
You have to shake it, your
it's
developer.
Like, the hardest part was
shaking your booty.
loading the film into the canister. You had to do that in the dark. You had to catch it and then go.
Well, there are lights in there. You can see.
Not for the negative, you don't. That was for
completely dark.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The lights that you saw in her dark room, you can have a little light because you have to be able to see when it's in the developer and stuff. But all the right equipment was there.
Okay. So Laura has another vision, and she sees one of her models. Oh no, she sees two of her models, I wrote. And apparently they live together, and one's giving another a massage, Karen.
A topless massage. As you do.
As you do, Karen, you know. They probably would have had a pillow fight later if they wouldn't have been
I'm
killed.
sure if they hadn't been killed. Their nightly pillow fight. Topless.
So then there's a knock at the door. Lulu goes to answer the door and is grabbed.
So the thing is, you can see she
lets
recognizes
whoever it is in. Yes.
Yeah, she recognizes them. So she looks at them and then lets them in.
Her in her panties, and is she wearing a crop top or something at this? Or
I think she might have put something on. Yeah.
So then Laura tries to call them. Then the killer attacks the second model, and we hear the phone ringing. So I think they're both gone. Next thing I have is, what's the red phone on her desk for? She's using like a beige phone. Then there's another red phone on her desk. What's that one for? Is that like the special bat phone?
I don't know.
Is that the president when he calls that phone?
I didn't see that.
There was.
But it could have just been another line back then.
But it's red, Karen. It's a red phone. All right. So then we're at a funeral, and whoever's giving the funeral didn't know the girls at all, but he's doing the best he can. And of course, he has to work in temptation, Karen, because apparently he's a preacher of some sort. Lieutenant watches, and then Laura is hounded by reporters as she leaves the funeral. And one of the loved ones of one of the girls who was murdered, blames Laura. There's this dude that we saw earlier for like a second.
I didn't remember him, but
I did.
He came out of nowhere to me, but it might have been the guy that they were talking about, the border war. Was it him?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So then Lieutenant puts Laura in his car and they drive away. And I wrote, they're sitting pretty close together when we see them on that bench seat in the front seat. That's a pretty, I remember.
There's room.
How front seats were. They were sitting pretty close together. I'm thinking, is that because of the shot? They were just framing the shot, or I don't know, whatever. So then we see Lieutenant and Laura at a park, ? I wrote.
Well, she says, we don't have to go back to the city right now, do we? And he said, no, we don't. So he takes her to a park.
And then they kiss, Karen.
With beautiful fall foliage. It's very romantic.
Seems very October-ish. September, October. They kiss, and apparently they have a bond, ?
Yes, they can't stop thinking about each other.
Yeah, they can't be without one another, Karen. They just can't. Yep. Next, they wake up in bed together, Karen, and they kissy face some more, I wrote.
I said he's got one heck of a unibrow going straight across.
Does he?
Yeah.
So Lieutenant gives her a gun and shows her how to use it and tells her if she has to, use it.
Yes.
And then he says, you'll be doing the son of a bitch a favor.
Exactly.
Next, cut to Donald's birthday party. Tommy drops Laura off and she asks him to come back and get her in an hour. She ain't going to stay long, apparently, at this party.
No, and apparently he's not allowed in. He's not invited. And he's kind of like, what am I supposed to do for an hour?
He sits out inside the hall and shuffles a deck of cards. Next, Laura receives a call from Michael at the party on the landline, Karen, because she didn't have a cell phone.
No.
Because there was no such thing.
But he knows where she is.
That's right. Michael is drunk and at a laundromat in Brooklyn. He knows the number even though he's drunk, Karen.
He's talking about killing himself.
But she says she knows how. She's got to go to him. She knows how to evade the police watching the building, right? Then we cut down to outside the building. We see what appears to be a woman leaving the building, and the police follow her. They think it's Laura because it's
a very tall woman.
dressed in kind of what she was wearing, right? Her hat and coat and whatnot. And I wrote, Laura does the old switcheroo and gets into a pacer.
Yes, it was a
An
pacer.
AMC pacer, Karen.
That was funny. Because you'd think he'd have a nicer car than a pacer. Because I'm assuming it's her agent's car, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Police stop who they think is Laura, and it turns out to be Donald. And then we see Laura wearing Donald's clothes, apparently getting into Donald's car, the AMC Pacer. So then Laura has another vision, someone stalking Donald, wearing her dress and heels. And
Donald is wearing them.
yeah,
Yes.
I think they wore the same size heels, Karen, because he's wearing heels,
He is. He's decked out. I don't know how
stockings, and everything. So she does a U-turn in the Pacer. Donald's killed, and Laura crashes the Pacer.
Well, because she can't see anything in front of her. So she shouldn't have been able to make any of those turns, but
True.
she crashes.
Then Lieutenant takes Laura home, and Lieutenant gives Laura her medication.
And he's willing to take some too.
Yeah. And I wrote, he's wearing very cool bell bottoms, Karen. Like those pants. I dig them.
They're probably corduroy.
I think they were jeans, but they were badass. They kissy face, and then there's a buzzer, like the door or something. And Lieutenant goes to get it, and it's one of the cops. And apparently have some evidence now, and the lieutenant leaves.
Puts his shoes back on. He has to get himself back together, but yes.
Puts his shoes and jacket back on. So then we see police searching an apartment. The phone rings, and Tommy calls and talks to the lieutenant. Tommy wants to talk to him, man to man. Lieutenant tells all the other cops to leave. So apparently they're in Tommy's apartment. So Tommy goes to apartment to talk to the lieutenant. We do see a cop outside the door as Tommy goes in. He doesn't see him, but the cop's hiding.
Well, yeah, because, you wouldn't just let him go in there. He might have a gun or something.
So the other cop listens at the door, and Tommy kind of tells his story. And I wrote, there's a poster of Jerry Garcia behind him from the Grateful Dead, Karen.
Nice.
First I thought it was Eric Clapton because he's playing a Stratocaster, and you don't usually see Jerry Garcia playing a Strat. Whatever. Lieutenant tells Tommy that one of the playing cards from his deck was found in the elevator with Donald. I think it's a 3 of spades.
Or clubs. It was dark.
Okay. It was either clubs or spades.
Yes.
Lieutenant questions Tommy. Then the other cop enters, and they want to take Tommy down for observation because they're making him sound like he's crazy.
The lieutenant wants to take him in for observation. He's saying he's sick. So you can kind of see later, looking back on it, you can see that he's kind of projecting onto Tommy that if you're doing these killings, you're sick. But he does mention Bellevue because Tommy says, I'm not going to Bellevue. And Bellevue Hospital in New York City has a long history of psychiatric care, including it was one of the first places to separate from the main hospital and have a psychiatric building, which was constructed in 1879, which was considered revolutionary at the time. The hospital's 600-bed psychiatric building has been home to many celebrity patients, including poet Sylvia Plath and singer John Lennon. It opened the first children's psychiatric inpatient service in the United States in 1923 and the world's first adolescent inpatient unit in 1937. It's used as I think it says metonym for psychiatric hospitals, which means it represents all of them. But it has a reputation in movies.
Adhesive bandages are all called Band-Aids.
Yes, and Kleenexes are Kleenex. It has a reputation in movies such as Miracle on 34th Street and The Godfather as a scary place. It's the oldest American public hospital. It says it has treated presidents and paupers, but it's not in movies especially known as a good place to go. So Tommy does not want to go there.
Nope. So Tommy pulls a knife and runs away. And as he runs away, he stabs one of the cops as he leaves, it looks like.
Yes, that's how desperate he is. But the lieutenant is trying to catch him because he feels like Tommy is sick. But the other cops are just trying to shoot him and kill him, take him in.
Cops shoot at Tommy. Lieutenant chases Tommy, and We see a Marlboro ad in the street, Karen.
Yes. It's a good scene. They are running full out through the
That's
streets of
pretty
New
good.
York. Yeah.
And then the other cop shoots Tommy. He gone. And Lieutenant tells the cop he was sick. He was sick,
Yeah. The lieutenant's upset.
apparently. So then the lieutenant radios Laura. Can't call her. He's got to radio her.
Yeah. I don't know.
He
That
sends
was weird.
someone to her with a radio that he can talk to her with. I don't know. He tells her that they got him. He tells her to pack her bags. He's going to take her away.
It's all over. Everything's fine.
So next, Lieutenant gets in an elevator or starts doing. Well, there's Michael in the elevator.
Yeah, which was weird. Like, was he going to see Laura or what was he doing there? I
Don't know. But Laura has a vision. Someone attacked in an elevator with an ice pick. She sees the hallway to her apartment, apparently. And
I
then
thought she
Laura,
saw it was Michael.
I don't know that I didn't see it was Michael. I knew it was, but I didn't. In her visions, I couldn't tell it was Michael if I didn't know it was him. So I don't know. But she probably does.
She's packing, but she's packing. We see that the gun is there, and then we see the elevator scenes happening.
So she deadbolts the door because she sees someone walking down her hallway, apparently. And then someone bangs on the door, banging on the door. Eventually, the banging on the door stops. And she's yelling, get away, leave me alone, blah, blah, blah. And then we see behind her the lieutenant break through her window.
Yeah, he throws a patio chair through her window. And it just shatters like nobody's business.
Laura tells Lieutenant that someone's in the elevator. He says that no one is in there because he just got out of it. But he does tell Laura that Tommy is dead. It's over. And then Lieutenant tries to tell Laura what Tommy's motives were.
Yes, his story.
His father killed his mother because she was a hooker and blah, blah,
right
blah.
In front of the baby who was
but
in
she
diapers.
Doesn't seem to believe it from the very beginning. Like, she probably knows Tommy's story. Except that he was an ex-con. I don't think she knew that. But she kind of got the feeling that she knew about his mother and father. Because
she says, yeah, that's not his story.
No. And then he says he witnessed it. Her blood was like color of her hair.
At some point, he says I instead of Tommy.
I witnessed it.
Instead of he. Yeah. And she catches that he said I.
And then he starts talking about his other personalities or some shit.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he has multiple personalities, but he does.
He's Looney Tunes, and he's letting it all out right here.
Yeah, he's got at least two personalities.
So then Laura has a vision of the lieutenant stalking her. Lieutenant takes an ice pick. Laura tells him she loves him and hugs him. Lieutenant smashes his reflection in the mirror.
That's where he pokes the mirror, pushes the ice pick into the mirror, and it shatters. And then he looks in the mirror, and one of his eyes, you can't see it. I thought that was pretty cool. And he looks, I didn't realize it until now, but he's going between personalities. And you can see he looks menacing. He does a good menacing look.
Yeah, I thought Scarface. Ooh, he's Scarface. Or no, he's Two-Face.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you could see it. I didn't get it. It wasn't as clear to me until, oh, that's what he was doing. But there are some really good shots of him looking menacing and then looking not so menacing.
So then Laura has the gun. Lieutenant approaches her. He says, if you love me, kill me. Lieutenant takes the gun and puts it right in his gut. And then he cocks the hammer. And he tells Laura to shoot him.
She seems to realize there's more than one personality. And she's trying to talk because she says, like you said, she hugged him, I love you. And he's saying, I love you, kill me. I love you, kill me.
So she shoots him, Karen. He gone. It was pretty easy for her to shoot him. I thought that was kind of weird, but whatever. She does. She shoots him. He gone. Next, we have Laura calling the cops and reporting the death. Credits. The end.
He really did love me. And the person on the other end is, what's your name? Where are you? And she's telling the story instead of saying where she
What's your name, woman?
So there you go.
Just want your name.
She finally got someone to really love her, and his other personality didn't.
All right, Karen, what did you think of the Faye Dunaway?
I liked it. I think I would like it with the hot pepper in it. I think it would give it a little punch.
It is. It's very sweet, but you get the heat. So I
Yeah,
use,
I
like
think
I
there would
said, I
be a
use
nice
hot sauce.
balance there. Yeah,
It was a nice balance, but mine is evaporated.
good job.
It's pretty good because you got mango and agave and lime,
Yeah,
a
it
little
was
heat.
good.
Anything we learned today, Karen?
We learned about Bellevue Hospital, Helmut Newton, what $50 was worth from 1978, a little bit about darkroom procedures, who Rona Barrett was. And that's it, I think. Is that it?
And that Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes
Oh,
Back, the
yes.
best Star Wars film ever made.
That important detail.
And we had references to Casey and the Sunshine Band, who I think you've seen live,
I
Karen, haven't you?
have. With your gift.
Yes, with my gift of
I
a
don't
wife.
think she's forgiven me for that yet. The
All right.
music's great. Casey, not so much. Anyway,
Are we ready to move on to next film, Karen?
yes, what do you got for us?
Karen, the film I have chosen is a Hammer film
Ooh,
starring Christopher Lee.
what?
I know, right? And it is not what you think.
Okay, what is it?
Film is called To the Devil a Daughter from 1976.
Okay, another 70s film. We're grooving.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose that one? Well, it's Christopher Lee in a Hammer film. Do I really have to ask you why you chose it? But sure. Why did you choose that one, Craig?
Because, Karen, that episode goes live on January 22nd, and Natasha Kinski's birthday is January 24th,
There you go.
and she is in this film.
Oh, that's good.
A very young Natasha Kinski is in this film.
I would guess so.
Very young. So we'll see how that goes.
Do you have a drink to go with it?
I do, Karen.
What would that be?
Drink I have chosen is called the Morphine Drip.
Oh, okay.
We'll find out how it goes with it at some point, I'm sure, because I don't remember at this point. But the Morphine Drip, we're going to need butterscotch schnapps, Bacardi 151 rum, which you can't find anymore. So just Bacardi rum will be fine, or just white rum, and amaretto almond liqueur.
Ooh, you do like that.
I know, right? Butterscotch, rum, and almond liqueur.
That's
Delicious.
I think you're just choosing this drink to choose it and hoping you can somehow fit it in there.
Possibly.
It's okay. We
We're
can
gonna
do
pour,
that.
We're going to pour half a shot of butterscotch schnapps into a shot glass, top with half a shot of amaretto, and then splash with rum and light on fire. So this is a shot, Karen.
A flaming shot.
Then we're going to put the fire out and drink, but our rum's not going to light on fire. So
So I can keep my eyebrows. Excellent.
yes, keep your eyebrows, Karen. It seems like a waste to have all that wasted in a shot. But okay.
You can do multiples.
All right. Anyone you need to thank this week, Karen?
Well, we have to thank our listeners. Thanks for sticking with us in 2025. There's a lot of podcasts out there. We appreciate that you spend time with us. What about you, Greg? Who do you need to thank?
Karen, I'm going to thank the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the Scary Spirits podcast, where the movies might be iffy, but the drinks are always solid. We would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast, or go to our website, scaryspirits.com. And if you want the direct line, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. If you really want to help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And remember, always drink responsibly. See you next week.